Hello CSU in Fort Collins, I'm Jacky Wilson, and today we have a very special event for you. We're hosting our first collegian debate. We have the Chief Justice of the Associated Students of CSU, Rioux Jordan, and Skyler Leonard of the Collegian to discuss recent legislation hitting the ASCSU. Bill 4411 seeks to reform the controversial topic of impeachment within ASCSU. Thank you guys both for joining us today.
Thank you.
To begin, I'd like to take a few minutes for both of you to introduce yourselves. Rioux, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Jacky. I'm Rioux Jordan. I'm the ASCSU Chief Justice. I'm also the author of this bill that we're talking about today.
Wonderful. And Skyler, how about you?
Yeah, I'm Skyler Leonard. I'm a columnist at the Collegian right now. Last year I was a news editor, and before that I was the ASCSU beat reporter.
Wonderful. Well, very nice to have both of you in the studio. All right, so let's begin with the very first question. Both of you will be given 3 minutes to answer, and then we'll allow for both of you to cross-examine. Our first question, does the revealed inadequacies of last year's impeachment process really call for a constitutional amendment, or is there another route that the ASCSU can take to solve the issues? Why or why not? Rioux, again, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Jacky. Answer, yes, this does take a constitutional amendment. Why? Well, there's a few answers to that. First off, one of the revealed inadequacies from last year was that we had trouble finding what the impeachment procedures were, how to do it, and that situation. This version of the bill, this reformation for the impeachment, directly states in the Constitution, the #1 governing document, that you have impeachment procedures, you know where to find them, you know what to do. Second, we have in the previous version, Article 600, it was just a set of lists of different ways that you could impeach different people. The new bill calls for replacing it with one section that gives out basic guidelines for impeaching every single ASCSU official. On top of that, it fixes a problem. It said it required 10% of members of ASCSU. For those not involved, we had a member of ASCSU is anyone taking 1 credit. Previously, it said 10%. That's nearly 3,000 people to impeach. Now, about 300 people, general students, can start an impeachment process if they don't like the way their government's being handled.
Very interesting. All right, and Skyler, how about you?
Okay, so I agree that to have a constitutional amendment to help with the confusion that happened during last semester, that's a good thing. Where I take issue is the Act of Sunshine laws. Given the fact that within the current process in the amendment that ASCSU would implement, we would not be able as a media group to cover an executive session. Now this is important given the fact that an executive session means that it's closed doors. The media can't see what the reasons are for why a person is impeached. And to make sure that our government, our student government, has checks and balances, that is pivotal.
Great responses. Let's move on to our next question. Again, you'll each be given 3 minutes to answer. The question, will the proposed amendment fix the issues of transparency and trust between the student body and the ASCSU? What else can be done to help the ASCSU become more credible as a student government? Skyler, we'll start with you this round.
So I think what needs to happen is that ASCSU needs to emulate a legitimate government. Now last year, CSU officials decided to basically release to student media that ASCSU is not technically an official governing body. Even though on their website they do state that they are CSU's student government, when CSU officials state otherwise, it creates an issue of transparency and also a delegitimizing kind of effect. So what needs to change is that our student government needs to emulate the government that they should achieve to be. So that means that there needs to be transparency on issues of electing officials, and then it said impeaching those officials.
All right, and Rioux, how about your response?
I actually would like to correct Skyler on a couple things. You had a few inaccuracies on your positions. First off, this version, I don't know if you've actually had a chance to read through the bill, the part that tells you who's open, who gets to see the evidence, that's open to the entire public now. All the evidence, all the presentation from the impeachment committee, even a statement from both the defendant and the plaintiff is all open to the public. The only thing that's in an executive session now is what's called the deliberations. So when the senators are talking about specific individuals, trying to decide, are we going to remove this person from office or not? You can't have that person in the room for that conversation for it to be open. Ironically, if we don't have it closed, we can't have an open conversation about whether or not this person's doing their job properly. As to the governing body versus government situation, this is a technicality that's a little confusing. Governing body means we have is an organization that has direct control over how something operates. So the LSC governing board controls how the LSC operates. But ASCSU is a student government, even though it is not a governing body, because we do not have the power to force students to do something, to impose regulation. Thus, governing body, saying we're not a governing body, is not the same thing as saying we're not a student government. Thus, we're legitimate and we're being transparent.
All right, well, we are just getting started, and when we come back from commercial break, we'll get to our questions in the rapid fire round, so stay tuned.
The Skyler offers a traditional pub menu, 20 beers on tap, and even fresh-to-order pizza coming soon.
Stop by Sweet Sensations for a delicious bakery item, espresso, or any other coffee needs you may have.
Hi, welcome to Aspen Grill.
Aspen Grill is a student-operated restaurant located in the University Club. The food court features a number of different restaurants to satisfy your needs between classes.
Having one of those days where you need to just get out of your head and chill out? If that's the case, head to the Laurie Student Center and relax. One of the best spots to relax in the LSC is outside the food court on the plinth lawn. Don't forget to stop by the Ramhead Fountain. The Level 100 Commons is the perfect spot. Lounge by the flat screen TVs or enjoy one of the gaming chairs to escape the daily grind. You can always relax in the LSC.
Welcome back, CSU. We're continuing our first debate special with Rioux and Skyler. So let's jump right back in and start with our rapid fire questions. You'll have a minute to answer, and after you both have spoken, we'll allow for a response. Rioux, we'll start with you, and after Skyler answers, we'll allow you to respond. The question, does the following amendment solve the issue of whether or not the public may watch the impeachment proceeding?
As I just addressed, it does. Listed in Section 6, Rise and Report in the impeachment procedures, the 4-page document attached to the bill, it allows the public to view the evidence presentation by the impeachment committee, including the statement by the defendant and the plaintiff. That is the meat and potatoes of what the impeachment is, of whether or not this person's going to be removed. The public has all the evidence right there before them for them to make their own decisions, to decide if the rest of the senators are doing their job when they make their decision.
All right, and Skyler?
So to clarify, when they go into executive session, that still means that senators who are our representatives are having to discuss the issue at hand. And that's a meeting that should be open given the fact that we need to see what they're saying about this elected official. In no other governing body would you have an impeachment process happen behind closed doors in any way possible. If it was a person who was not elected, such as like a city manager, then it would be an issue, like a personnel issue. Yet, given the fact that this is dealing with students who are elected, having the senators be able to voice their opinions on why that senator should or should not be impeached is essential.
All right, and Rioux, would you like to respond?
Yes, I would. So, to the question of being able to see what your senators are saying, this is a difficult question because, yes, we strive for openness and being public, but the problem is we want to be able to properly make a decision. And if everybody knows that they're going to be speaking in public and that their evidence will be aired and that more information than the impeachment committee decided was actually relevant might actually end up out there, we're not going to get as much evidence, and we might not be able to make as good a decision about whether or not to actually remove the official. So yes, again, if we don't have a closed session for discussion only, we can't make the best decision.
Let's move on to our last question before closing statements. Skyler, we'll start with you. Allow Rioux to respond, then you'll be given a minute to respond. The question, if you were to make any changes to the bill, what would they be and why?
I feel like it's pretty obvious at this point. I would prefer that there wouldn't be executive sessions. I feel that our student government should emulate what an actual government does, and I feel like by doing that, they can have better representation and they can prove to the student body that what they're doing is correct and that the students can see like what their senators believe.
All right, and Rioux, your response?
Changes. This is a government process. This is the third version of the bill we've gotten so far. I've been making changes all along the way. In fact, it's not passed yet. Come to Senate next Wednesday, voice your opinion, and we'll take it in consideration, maybe amend the bill.
All right, and Skyler, any closing remarks?
Yeah, I would just like to say that more people who can voice their opinion on this, the better. Given the fact that last year's election cycle for ASCSU, only 16% of the student populace voted, it's truly something essential to get your voice heard.
All right, well, to close our debate, we'd like to give you both the opportunity for closing statements. You'll each be given 2 minutes, and we'll start with you, Rioux.
As I think I've made fairly clear tonight, the bill does what it's supposed to do. It fixes the impeachment. It makes, I don't know if I actually mentioned this, I was the chair of the impeachment committee in the fall, so I was in the perfect position to see what went right and what didn't. Following the impeachment, I took that advice, I met with a group of people, brought this together, and we determined this would be the best way to handle impeachments in the future. So based on that, thank you for listening tonight, and come out to Senate. We'd love to get your opinions.
All right, and Skyler, your closing statements?
Yeah, so last fall during the impeachment process, I sat with other reporters when they decided to go into executive session, and it was a value that I hold dear to that we basically stayed in the room even though it was an executive session, because we believed that whatever was going to be said in that room, we needed to know. And moving forward, I would just like to make sure that when Senate does go into an executive session, that what is discussed and what happens in that session can be open to the public in some shape or form.
Thank you both for participating in our first collegian debate. We look forward to seeing you both succeed in the future, and thank you, CSU, for tuning in and watching. I'm Jacky Wilson. See ya.